All right, let's jump right in. If you've ever worked in a business, or even if you're just studying it, you know the drill with company dashboards. And when you look at any procurement department, there's always one number that gets all the attention: savings. It's the big one, the metric everyone is chasing. But what if I told you that number isn't the whole story? Not even close. I want you to just let that question sink in for a second. It's a bit of an uncomfortable one, isn't it? But it really gets to the core of what we're talking about today. Because for a surprising number of companies, the honest-to-goodness answer is probably not. Those reported savings don't always show up as real, actual value on the bottom line. We see numbers like this all the time, right? A 5% cost reduction here, a 10% win in a negotiation there. And sure, they get celebrated, they look fantastic on a PowerPoint slide, but they often mask a much, much more complicated reality happening behind the scenes. So here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by pulling back the curtain on what I call the savings illusion. Then we'll dive into 3 really common and costly misconceptions that trip people up. After that, we'll pivot to a whole new way of thinking, moving from just chasing savings to creating real value. We'll figure out how to measure what actually matters, and then finally, we'll see how this transforms procurement from a simple cost center into a true performance engine for the entire business. Okay, so here's the fundamental problem. There is a massive difference between what procurement has traditionally done, which is basically optimizing the price on a single transaction, and what the business really needs, which is improving its overall economic health. That savings number you see on a spreadsheet, it often completely misses the full story of what's happening out in the real world of operations. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this savings illusion can lead us into some pretty nasty traps. We're going to walk through 3 classic scenarios where a procurement win on paper actually ends up creating a loss for the business in practice. And hey, whether you're a student or a seasoned pro, these are absolutely essential lessons to understand. First up, a scenario that's an absolute classic. Picture this. The sourcing team finds a new supplier for a key component, and it's 8% cheaper. Amazing, right? High fives all around, the savings get booked, and it looks like a total victory. But then, the dominoes start to fall. As we see in this flow, that cheaper component, it has a slightly higher defect rate. It's not a huge crisis, but it's enough to cause problems. That means more inspections, which leads to more rework on the assembly line. That, in turn, causes more stoppages and downtime. And suddenly, that initial price cut is completely erased, and then some, by a big increase in the total operating cost. The company is actually less efficient now, even though procurement reported a big win. And this brings us to our first huge takeaway. You have to burn this into your brain. Price reduction is not the same thing as cost reduction. The price on the purchase order is just the tip of the iceberg. The real cost exists across the entire life cycle, in quality, in logistics, and downtime. That's the much bigger economic puzzle we need to solve. All right, on to our second example. This time, the team goes to the mat with a really important strategic supplier. They negotiate hard, they squeeze the supplier's margins, and they walk away with a better price. On the surface, it looks like a masterclass in negotiation. So the supplier agrees to the new, lower price, but something has fundamentally changed in the relationship. As the diagram here shows, their natural response is to become a little less responsive, to pull back on the capacity they reserve for you. Then, bam, the market for your product suddenly spikes. You need more supply, and you need it fast. But now, your supplier is prioritizing their other, more profitable customers. The result is you can't meet demand. You lose out on sales. That negotiation win per item just led to a massive loss in total profit. This is a perfect illustration of our second key lesson. A successful transaction can do serious damage to a critical business relationship. In the complex world of supply chains, those relationships are often the only thing standing between business continuity and a full-blown crisis. Okay, for our final scenario, let's wade into the world of finance. A company decides it wants to improve its working capital. Basically, have more cash on hand for day-to-day stuff. So they tell their suppliers they're extending payment terms from, say, 30 days to 90 days. And for a little while, it works. The cash flow reports look better. It's a temporary win on paper. But here's the thing. Suppliers are smart. They adapt. As you can see, they're not just going to finance your business for free. The next time a contract is up, they just build the cost of waiting 90 days for their money right into their prices. Or maybe their service levels just start to dip. That short-term accounting trick just created a very real, long-term economic cost for the business.
So after seeing all these ways things can go wrong, the path forward starts to become a lot clearer. It really requires a fundamental shift in our thinking. We have to stop obsessing over the savings number and start focusing on creating genuine value. And that begins by asking a completely different kind of question.
This slide, honestly, this is everything. The old question was always, how much did we cut the supplier's price? It's narrow, it's tactical. The new question is, what got better in the business because of what we just did? See the difference? This is strategic, it's holistic. It forces us to connect every procurement decision directly to a business outcome, which is the whole point. Of course, it's one thing to ask that new question, but we need a way to actually measure the answer. So if it's not about this simple price reduction, how do we quantify this thing called value? Well, it turns out that real value creation tends to show up in 5 key areas. And here they are, the 5 pillars of value. First up, operational efficiency. Is the business just running smoother with fewer headaches and disruptions? Second, revenue protection. Did our decision help protect sales by making sure supply is always there when we need it? Third, working capital stability. Are we creating real financial health, not just playing games with payment terms? Fourth, risk reduction. Are we actively making the business safer from supply chain shocks? And finally, life cycle cost. Are we looking at the total cost of ownership over time, not just that initial price tag? These are the metrics that really move the needle. Now, this doesn't mean the concept of savings is totally useless. We just need to put it in its proper place. The best way to think of savings is as an activity metric. It's a useful indicator that tells you your team put in some commercial effort. But what it does not tell you is the true economic impact of that effort. It's just one piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture. So when a team truly makes the shift, when they really embrace this move from savings to value, something incredible starts to happen. The entire function begins to transform. It evolves from being this tactical back office department into something way more strategic and way more powerful. And this, right here, is the ultimate goal. This is the evolution. It's the difference between being a function that just reports numbers and becoming a function that actively improves the performance of the business. You stop just negotiating costs out of a contract and start removing friction from the entire business operation. It's a total game changer. So let's end on this one thought. A saving is just a number. It lives and dies in a spreadsheet. But real value? That's a tangible, measurable improvement in how a company operates, how it competes, and ultimately how it wins in the marketplace. And understanding that difference, well, that changes everything.